Hey kids, welcome back again to what we're doing and reading the book by J.T. Headley. I think it was 1864, The Clergy. Oh no, you'll get it right. Come on kids, you tell me. The Chaplains and Clergy of the Revolution. So I'm real happy to be back with you again as we're getting closer to the end of the book, So I know that you're excited about that. Well, I hope all the stories are worthwhile for you. I know that I'm enjoying this reading. So let's continue on with this new chapter on Chaplains and Clergy of the Revolution, chapter 42. And this is a Mr. Boardman. He's the chaplain to Durkee's regiment, his diary. A strong doubt exists as to the proper name of the place at the head of this sketch. My utmost efforts have failed to discover who was the chaplain of Durkee's regiment. From those Mr. Boardman. Let's start over all the way. Chapter 42. Mr. Boardman, chaplain to Durkee's regiment, his diary. A strong doubt exists as to the proper name to be placed at the head of this sketch. My utmost effort has failed to discover who was the chaplain of Durkee's regiment, from whose diary the following extract is taken. I have been able to learn only that his name was probably Boardman. Powell Hook, September 15, 1776. After Long Island was evacuated, it was judged impossible to hold the city of New York, and for several days the artillery and stores of every kind had been removing, and last night the sick were ordered to Newark in the Jerseys. But most of them could be got no farther than this place and Hobuck. And as there is but one house at each of these places, many were obliged to lie in the open air till this morning, whose distress, when I walked out at daybreak, gave me a livelier idea of the horrors of war than anything I ever met with before. The commandant ordered them everything for their comfort that the place afforded, and immediately forwarded them to the place appointed and prepared for them. About 8 this morning, 3 large ships came to sail and made up towards the Hook. The garrison, consisting of the 20th Continental Regiment, Colonel Durkee's, and a regiment of Jersey militia, Colonel Dykink's, were ordered into the works. Soon after they had taken their posts, the ships came up near Jersey shore to avoid our shot from the Grand Battery, the removal of the cannon from which they were ignorant of. And as they passed up the North River, kept up an incessant fire upon us. Their shot, a great part of which was grape, raked the whole Hook, but providentially 1 horse was all the loss we sustained by it. The fire was briskly returned from our battery by Captain Dana, who commanded a company of the train on this station. It gave me great pleasure to see the spirit of the troops around me, who were evidently animated by the whistling of the enemy's shot, which often struck no near them as to cover them with dust. About 11 o'clock, a furious cannonade was heard a little above New York, and before night numbers came over from the city and informed us that it was evacuated by our troops, and about sunset we saw the tyrant's flag floating on Fort George. Having received intelligence that a number of our troops were in the city and the enemy spread across the island above, 2 small parties were ordered to assist them in making their escape. 2 captains with about 40 men, 2 brass howitzers, and about 2 tons of military stores were brought off by one of them. The other party, consisting of 5 men only, were fired upon by the enemy, supposed to be the Tories, who have committed a number of robberies on the Friends of America. When one, Jesse Squire of Norwich, was wounded, who, together with another, fell into their hands. 16th. About 2 o'clock this morning, an attempt was made to burn the ships that passed up the North River yesterday and anchored about 3 miles above us. One of them, the Renown, of 50 guns, was grappled, but broke her grappling and came down by us again. Another cannonade ensued, but no damage was received on our side. The brave Colonel Durkee, who did all he could to retain his men, could now keep his regiment no longer, but was obliged to retreat to Bergen, from which time Colonel Durkee was left on the hook with only a part of his regiment, consisting of about 300 effective men. The 17th. An express arrived with information that Colonel Williams from Connecticut was ordered to reinforce us and might be expected next day, but was not able to join us till our retreat to Bergen. This day, a quantity of lead, musket ball, and buckshot was discovered in a suspected house about 1.5 miles above us, and brought down to this place and properly secured for the United States. Towards night, the Renown returned back to her station up the North River, but kept near to the eastern shore to avoid the shot from our battery, which, however, kept up a brisk fire upon her as long as she was within reach. The 18th. Nothing material happened here. Just at evening, intelligence was received that the brave Lieutenant Colonel Knowlton of our regiment was killed in the action that happened a little below Kingsbridge on Monday. As he was fighting with undaunted courage at the head of the body of Rangers, the command of which was assigned him. The joy of the success that action would have occasioned was greatly lessened in this department by the loss of an officer so greatly respected and beloved. The 20th. The Renown returned back again to the fleet, and though she passed close and with the New York shore, yet, as there was very little wind, about 40 shots from our battery were fired at her, many of which took effect. She lay all next day upon a careen to repair. The 21st. At 2, we were waked up by the guards, who informed us that New York was on fire. As the fire began at the southeast end of the city, a little east of the Grand Battery, it was spread by a strong south wind, first on the East River and then northward across the Broadway opposite to the Old English Church, if I mistake not the name. From thence it consumed all before it between Broadway and the North River, near to the college, laying about 1/3 part of the city in ashes, in the opinion of those beset acquainted with it, and had not the wind, as it veered to the west, died away, the remainder of that nest of vipers would have been destroyed. This evening a seaman, who said he belonged to the Providence, and that he was taken and obliged to fight against his countrymen on board the Roebuck, made his escape by swimming from New York to this place. He informed that the men on board the Roebuck were very sickly, that they had lost 100 since they left the Capes of Virginia. He also gave notice that preparations had been made to attack this post, that the large body of troops in boats, which we discovered on the opposite shore above us this afternoon, were to make a descent above us and endeavor to cut off our retreat, that it was to have been executed this morning, but the fire prevented. 22nd. As no reinforcements could be sent us, we received orders this morning to remove our artillery, stores, and baggage, and hold ourselves in readiness to retreat. Before night, Most of them were removed. About 9 a.m., we saw the enemy embarking in flat-bottomed boats about 2 miles above us, who appeared in large numbers on the shore after about 40 were full. 4 ships at the same time came to sail below and stood up towards us. But they soon came to anchor again, and the boats which had pushed off returned back. Had they come at this time, we might either have retired and left them large quantities of artillery and stores, or fought their army and navy at the same time with our small detachment, and that under every disadvantage. But they saw fit to retire to get more strength, as appeared afterwards, though they could not be ignorant of our weakness, as our men were paraded every day in full view of them. On the 23rd, at 1 p.m., having removed everything of value, we were ordered to retreat from the Hook. As soon as we began our march, 4 ships came up and anchored near the shore around the Hook. At the same time, a number of boats and floating batteries came down from just above New York. The latter run up into the cove opposite the causeway that leads to Bergen. After taking considerable time to see that there was nobody to hurt them, they began a most furious cannonade on our empty works, which continued till they had wearied themselves. In a word, they dared to come much nearer and display the boasted British valor in much brighter colors than ever they had while there remained a single man to oppose them. Meanwhile, our little battalion retreated with drums beating and colors flying to Bergen, and before night the brave Britons ventured on shore and took possession of our evacuated works, where they have taken every precaution to prevent our formidable detachment from returning and driving them from a post, which, with so great a display of heroism, they have got possession of. The post we are now possess covers the Jerseys. Here we are reinforced by a number of regiments. More are daily coming in. The sick are recovering, the troops in high spirits, and we have no fear, but we shall be able to maintain our ground against all the banditti of George III. The subsequent overthrow of the American army dispelled this brave chaplain's immediate hopes, and what became of him in the turbulent events that followed, I have been unable to ascertain. Such waifs drifting down to us from the past show us how many valuable incidents respecting the Revolutionary War might have been saved from oblivion had efforts been made a half-century ago to have collected them. So kids, in other words, this was a very interesting diary, but as with so many things in history, they go missing. They go missing even from the most prominent people, let alone those who are not so prominent, but have been called to engage history, to speak of history. It's important in that respect for you that this history is there to learn from, to take hold of, and to live your history in a memorable way so that it will be able to be recollected at least by our families, but more so, hopefully, in the eyes of God. Come on back as we go into the next chapter, which is chapter 43, and it is a Mr. Magoon. Mr. Magoon. Not Mr. Magoo, that was an old TV program, but Mr. Magoon. All right, we'll see you then.